What's going on, guys? It's Greg from East Coast Dives. We are back with another head review, and this one is for the highly anticipated Stringking Mark II V. So before I get into the actual review of the head, I just want to clear the air a little bit. Everyone thinks that Stringking and ourselves are like huge enemies. They've created this East Coast, West Coast kind of rivalry just because we both started in mesh. But the reality is, we both really like each other. I talk to Jake, their president, all the time. We have very alike histories. We both started in mesh, then moved to shafts, and now we're both making heads. And really, we get along really well and like each other, have a mutual respect for what we're doing in the business space. And so I'd say we're pretty good friends.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup!
So now that the air is kind of clear there, I want to get deep into the Mark II V head review. So this head is coming after their first head, the Mark I, which I reviewed a while ago. And so what they're doing with the 2 series is different from what a lot of companies do. They're breaking the 2 out into position specific. So the one I've got here is the V, which stands for versatile. And so I would consider this one, out of the ones they're working on, the most direct successor to the Mark I. The Mark I was meant to be kind of a please-all head. You could use it for defense, LSM, midi, attack, and they did have players using it at all those different positions. And I'd say the V fits that bill in the same way. So it's going to be kind of, it's great for pretty much every position. Midfield, attack, it's very universal, very versatile, as they would say. So basic specs, it's $89.99. It comes in white, black, and gray. And the weight is 4.7 ounces, I think just under 4.7 ounces. So just starting at the weight, the Mark I was at 5.1 ounces. And so they definitely shaved a lot of weight. And that's going to get us into the look. The big change from the Mark I to the Mark II is the cutting away of a lot of material. So let's first talk about what didn't change. Mostly it was like that kind of familiar side profile. So your profile, your offset here, and your return are very, very similar. The struts are very similar. You can see they shifted them up a little bit in the Mark II from where they had them in the Mark I. But the big change is coming in the weight shaving. So you can see here through the throat, they cut away pretty much all the material straight through and just have these thin bracing bars. And on the inside, they have pretty much most of the material on the struts, and then some on the inside here cut away, and then up through the scoop. And so they said you use like a bone growth algorithm to tell them where they could strategically cut the material away, and obviously a lot of that happened in the throat. I'm not in love with the way the throat look turned out, but I think they were focused more on functionality as far as that goes. So with the things they did design-wise, they were able to reduce the weight significantly down to just under 4.7 ounces, like I said. But for the versatility, keep the stiffness. It's not quite as stiff as the Mark I, but I would say they rose their weight to stiffness ratio, so they didn't drop as much stiffness as they did weight. So they reduced the weight, but still kept it very, very stiff to the point where, like I said, a D player, an LSM, a D midi could still use this head because it is very stiff and very durable. Getting into the overall look, it's very consistent with the Mark I. They've kind of got like a no frills design way about them. Unlike the Stallion, which I just reviewed, which had crazy design features. This is very simple, no change in finishes, no textures, just kind of satin look all the way around. It's very clean. That's going to be a personal preference thing, whether you like it or not. They're more all about the function rather than making it look really pretty. So it's a very simple looking head, but performs well. On the face shape, it's very, very similar to the Mark I. They made it just a tiny bit more pinched, which I like. I felt like the Mark I was just a tiny bit wide for my preference. So they just brought it a little bit in, up in this spot, gave it a tiny bit more flair, and that made it a little more desirable for offense and definitely easier to string. On the scoop, this is what the Mark I was known for. They've got a great scoop for ground balls, and they kept it almost exactly the same. It's got that deep angle to really make your scooping angle even when you're not getting down all the way. Really solid for GBs. They just took a lot of the thickness out. So my one complaint with the Mark I was this area right here was really thick, which led to some issues. So they thinned it out here at the point, but kept that same angle, that roundness on the back. So it's a great scoop for ground balls kind of at any angle. And then the other big design feature and addition they had was their locking bolt down here in the throat. Let me go ahead and take that out real quick. So this is a really good idea to reduce the head rattle. Actually, I think this is going to take me way longer than I anticipated. This is a lot of threads here. What we have is in the back, there's just a standard screw hole that you could use with any regular self-tapping screw, just like you would any other head. They haven't taken that option away. But in the front, there's a space for this locking bolt, which connects with another screw in the back and kind of clamps the shaft from the front and the back to reduce head wobble. So that's really going to reduce it more in this direction than it will in this direction. So it really does help reduce the head wobble. Their metal 2 shaft comes with the pre-drilled hole in the front. If you don't have that in your shaft, they kind of have a YouTube tutorial of how you can get the hole in the front so you can put the locking bolt in through both holes and then screw this into the back to clamp it in the middle. So I really like this idea. Head rattle is a big problem. It's very annoying. And I think it does a good job solving it, and they didn't take away the option to use a regular screw or a filled shaft, which I really like. The only thing I don't like is if you don't use the locking bolt, you get this kind of ugly, unbranded area in the front. Their logo is on the locking bolt, but if you take it out, it's just sort of odd looking, but great function, and it was a really good idea, a good simple way of solving that problem. So next up, and this is the biggest change for the Mark II pretty much from any head, is the stringing holes. So most heads have anywhere between 14 and 18. Stringking jacked it all the way up to 29 stringing holes, which is a ton. And so kind of see in the design, there are maybe 5 or 6 kind of larger ones up at the top, maybe 2 or 3 really big ones, and they go down to another size. And then from about here to here, there are tons of smaller holes that can fit 1 string through each, all the way down, making 29. Initial concern a lot of people had was, are they going to be durable enough with all these holes? They think it would break. Through our testing, we've seen, and their testing as well, that it's plenty durable. The string holes aren't going to be an area of weakness. Their basic idea was to provide you with as much customization as possible. And I personally think this is a great idea. As far as the pros of it, you're still going to use 10, 11, or 9 mesh diamonds down the side, so you're never going to use all these holes. It just determines where you place them. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. So let's say I have this knot all the way down here. If I'm feeling like that's just a little bit too tight, previously I'd have to move it a larger distance, but with all these stringing holes, I can move it a very small distance, make a very minute adjustment, and really fine tune where I want all these knots to sit. So it's great for making fine adjustments like that previously you really couldn't. Only downside I see is it could be difficult for beginners to learn a string. String is a daunting task to learn even with fewer sidewall holes. And now you kind of present something with all these holes, and it might be too many options for beginners, but if you really know what you're doing with the knots, you can place them really well. So I had 2 pockets strung up, this one more knots 1s and 2s, like their U-string pockets. This one, SIs and stacked SIs. And I didn't have any problem stringing it, and it worked really well. I didn't have to make any adjustments, but again, it's great if you do, you just slide up just a tiny bit. So basically, the small section, they have about 2 holes for every 1 you would have in a normal stick. So if you just want to use your regular patterns, down here you can just skip every other hole and use your normal pattern, and it should work almost exactly the same. But overall, really cool innovation in stringing there, especially for your more advanced stringers who like to get crazy with it. So overall, Mark II-V is a great head. We really like it. It's a great improvement from the Mark I. I think it lives up to the name of the versatility, where you could really use it many different levels of play, many different positions. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments of the Mark II-V. Make sure to like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, and have a great day.